Karen Bass never had administrative experience going into this job, and it shows. And Spencer Pratt has no administrative experience. And everybody is so enamored by these ads and Hollywood. It's like, what have we learned in this city? But I'm telling you, by doing a couple of stories where we question Spencer Pratt, you wouldn't believe the anti-Semitic comments that have been hurled my way. Okay, Mark, so I'm going to tell you in a few minutes about all the anti-Semitic comments that I've been getting directed toward me because I would dare do a critical story on Spencer Pratt. But I want to start with a phone call that I got yesterday from two very big celebrities in Hollywood. And they called to say, hey, Harvey, you got to vote for Spencer Pratt. You got to lay off Spencer. He's going to save the city. And, you know, I said to them, I said, you know, exactly what is it that just makes you think that Spencer Pratt is the savior? And I'm not saying anything for or against him. I'm just curious. And I really couldn't get anything other than, you know, we can't stand Karen Bass and look how good his ads are. And, you know, Mark, I have lived in this city all my life. I know City Hall better than Spencer Pratt does. And, you know, I was a reporter in LA for 15 years with CBS and NBC, and I covered City Hall. I know City Hall. I know the way the city works. And I am so alarmed that our choices are people who don't know how to administer government. There are 50,000 employees in LA, in the city of LA, employed by the city of LA, 44 departments. And Karen Bass never had administrative experience going into this job, and it shows. And Spencer Pratt has no administrative experience. And everybody is so enamored by these ads and Hollywood. It's like, what have we learned in this city? But I'm telling you, by doing a couple of stories where we question Spencer Pratt, you wouldn't believe the anti-Semitic comments that have been hurled my way.
So I think, Branson, do you have, it's so funny because we didn't get to talk today, but once again, separately and apart from us talking, I sent something to Branson. Do you have it, Branson?
Branson's our producer.
Oh, hi. If you're seeing this video, this is a reminder that a straight white male, former reality star that has no previous experience in government should not be a legitimate political candidate. Have we learned anything yet? The bar is on the fucking floor, people, and I need you to jump over it. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
Did she say what I think she said? A straight white male?
I knew that might try to,
Did that become disqualifying in the city of, what is she talking about? So, a straight white male? What is disqualifying about that?
We've had for those who
are, can we just, like, what the hell is she talking about? A straight white male, as if that's something bad? What is she saying?
And you notice she put in there that a little vignette of Donald Trump. And I'm told from a very reliable source that probably 1 degree of separation, that not only is he considering, but may, by the time this thing drops, endorse Spencer Pratt. And in LA, I do not know how that plays. I could take a wild guess as to conventional wisdom as to how that plays.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's going to be bad for Spencer Pratt if that happens. You're familiar with the story we did about the trailer that Spencer said he was living in, right?
Correct. The Airstream that's kind of, in fact, there's a couple of really clever and well done ads and then copycat ads and memes that are focused on the Airstream, on that kind of embedded on the burnt out hillside, that are really well done, no matter where you are on the spectrum of 14 candidates.
And let me tell you why we did that story. And, I did that story. And the reason that I thought it was important is that there is a lie in that campaign ad. When he is standing in front of a trailer with the door open, I know it's on a burned out lot, with his hands stretched out saying, "This is where I live," you walk away believing he's living in the trailer, especially since he's just shown you the mansion that Karen Bass lived in. So, look, he's staying at the Hotel Bel Air, and there's no shame in that. I mean, if he doesn't, they didn't hook up his.
Frankly, I'd like to retire at the Hotel Bel Air.
No, I mean, it's the swankiest place in LA. So,
Langham is close, so I'll give it that.
What is?
The Langham in Pasadena, the old Huntington Hotel.
Yeah, I think Bel Air's better. So, look,
such a West Sider. It's unbelievable.
The thing about the trailer is, he had a good argument here, which is that it took him DWP a month to put power in there. So that's actually a good argument why the city of Los Angeles doesn't function well. But the reality is, he's not living in that trailer, and the ad is deceptive. And we had him on TMZ Live that day. I think we did it on Tuesday, and he came on, and this was my problem with it. And the two big stars that called me yesterday saying, "Oh, why are you doing this to Spencer?" I explained it to him. I said, look, had Spencer just come on TMZ Live and said, campaign ads push the envelope, and maybe I pushed it too far. I'm not staying there. I am staying at a hotel. But the reality is that I can't even stay at the trailer because DWP is so bad. If he would have said that.
Well, later in the other excuse that he's given, or excuse, I think is too harsh, because, like I say, it's political speech, and I'm a huge believer in political speech. But the other explanation he gave was that his safety, that he's getting death threats and he's got a security team. And I guarantee you that's true. I don't doubt for a second.
But Mark, he was never staying in the trailer. You can't say I'm not staying in the trailer because I was getting death threats if he never stayed in the trailer because it was never ready. So
I understand, but if your point is he bought the trailer as a prop for the ad, I get it. But if he bought the and I don't know, because which came first, the trailer or the
threat,
right?
Look, he could have said various things, but instead he got so Trumpy on TMZ Live and just started, well, I don't live in a trailer, and I don't live in a hotel. I don't live anywhere. And my place is burned down, and we know that. And had he just stood on an empty, charred out lot, it would be authentic and it would have been real. Even if he was staying at a hotel, to say this is my home, that would be fine. But you take a little thing and you just create a lie out of it, and that's the way I see it. Look, that's my opinion. That it's just he knew what he was doing. And we found out about the hotel and we did the story. And instead of saying, okay, yeah, but he just, got very Trumpy. And I think that's alarming.
Well, I have been intrigued by this race, and now the nation is fascinated by this race, and internationally. I mean, there are UK outlets that are breathlessly covering this now, and I think rightfully so. I think, but for people who don't remember, Karen Bass got into office because she was running against Rick Caruso by a so-called October surprise. There was a recording of several city council members, in full disclosure, including a client of mine, who a recording from a year prior. Somebody sat on it. It was a recording that was done at a union headquarters. It was leaked right before the election, and it threw a grenade into that race. And Karen Bass, in a lot of ways, won the race because of that October surprise that I've always thought was engineered by the unions to take out Rick Caruso.
And I will say this, that if Rick Caruso were running this time, and it was between all of them and Rick Caruso, I mean, there is no one that would hold a candle to Rick Caruso. No one. I mean, Rick Caruso has administrative experience. He understands City Hall. He is a successful businessman. He's run huge organizations. On every level, Rick Caruso would have made a lot of sense. But Rick Caruso decided, for whatever reason, not to run this time. And that's where we are. Can I just tell you, I don't read the comments on TMZ.
I do, because they're endless entertainment. By the way, the TMZ comments and people who are doing the comments, you've got some very clever people in your comments. I mean, there's some good material in there.
I got to tell you something. People have told me in the office that there has just been a torrent of anti-Semitic comments directed at me for daring to criticize Spencer Pratt, which I got to say, I would say is alarming, except it's happening everywhere. There's a congressman in New York, Jared Moskowitz, who we got some voicemails in his office. You wouldn't believe the anti-Semitic comments that he got. So this is just going on right now. When you disagree with somebody, and especially if they're Jewish, you go for the jugular.
Well, it's disturbing because unlike you, I do scan the comments because a lot of times I see a lot of ones that are actually quite funny, and whether they're taking a shot at you or me, I agree. But yeah, there's 20% of the unhinged crazies at all times. Interestingly, earlier in the week before you did that piece on TMZ, we were getting clipped from our Two Angry Men and gaining much traction for the little spiel about the state of Los Angeles, which, by the way, I will stand by all day, every day. I've been screaming about what has happened in the last 8 years.
The city's going to shit.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And it's an interesting dynamic that has happened in this race. Because to your point, when Rick Caruso was mulling over the race, and for those who don't remember, he was looking at the governor's race, he was looking at the mayor's race, and then surprisingly didn't pick either. And I think most people thought he was leaning for the governor's race and were begging him to jump into the mayor's race. Then Nithya jumped in, and there was a moment in time, shows you how volatile this race is. There was a moment in time where Nithya had is this the LA's Mandami vibe going? She was going to come out of nowhere, former ally of Karen Bass. She was going to become the Mandami, and then all of a sudden Spencer just took off with these ads, with these memes. Branson, who's our producer, you have one more, I think, do you not?
These idiots won't know what hit them. The backyard BBQ ban is working just as planned.
Los Angeles forgot what protection feels like.
Is that Super Pratt?
I love it and I hate it because on the one hand, the ad is right that this city, I mean, and Karen Bass has done a terrible job with, protecting people in the sense of, the homeless situation out of control, which is overlapped with mental illness. And there's just been a lot of violence as a result. And I don't care what crime statistics show. I just know that in my area, which is technically not a particularly high crime area, I know what's going on with neighbors and what their stories are. And so this is no love lost for Karen Bass. As a matter of fact, I got to say that after our last podcast, Mark, I know you had some complimentary things. I had enough complimentary things to say about Spencer Pratt that he actually reposted our podcast. So, it's funny that you have to be solidly in a corner of one person. And if you dare criticize them, you're suddenly an enemy. It's one or the other. And that's the way our society works right now, which is really interesting. But we're not going to stop. I mean, we're just calling balls and strikes here. And I was curious, because we did another story this week, how you felt about this, that Spencer Pratt has signed a deal with a production company where he is doing I'm going to call it a reality show, where they're documenting the campaign and not only shooting him, but shooting Heidi and the kids. And We know this from sources with direct knowledge that if he gets elected, they will continue shooting this show for production, and they are looking for a buyer right now. How does that land with you?
It actually doesn't land badly with me. I kind of admire the fact that he's got the wherewithal to understand. We've entered a new media landscape. Obviously, you know better than anybody. We're in at a point where content creation is everything. It's kind of the coin of the realm right now. So that doesn't land bad with me at all. I think that what Spencer Pratt has shown is that in this day and age, you can fight, and he is transforming the political landscape. What was used in the New York mayor's election, which started as, okay, little vignettes of social media and controlling kind of the messaging in social media, is now a full-blown political strategy. And that is an amazing transformation in less than a year. Reminds me kind of like what has happened. I mean, I watch a lot of people talk about AI, and a lot of investors, very sharp people who talk about AI, and they talk about we've kind of turned the corner in some ways with what has happened with AI, and they've kind of had the epiphany or come to Jesus moment. And in this case, I think he's really redefined what you can do politically. However, I will.
Wait a minute, but what I got to know what you're talking about. Are you saying to me that if you can do AI ads making you look like a superhero or Batman, that gets you elected these days? Because if that's what you're saying, I might move to Mexico.
Well, I'm not saying you got me right before I was getting to where I wanted to go. I don't think that the New York experiment with Mandami translates into what will happen in LA for a number of reasons. The outlier, I think, recently was the DA's race last time around when George Gascon was thrown out and Nathan Hochman won. And that was a complete shift in LA. The reason Spencer Pratt is gaining a kind of monumental momentum is for a very simple reason. People like you, people like me, who are born, bred, raised, and work in Los Angeles are incredibly frustrated with what is happening. We've got a Department of Water and Power that is, nobody ever talks about this with any great frequency, but you can lay at the DWP a lot of fault for the fires. You can lay at DWP a lot of fault at why businesses can't sustain themselves doing business in the city of LA. They're absurd. The salaries that they're paid are out of control. Everybody talks about homelessness, and they talk about what they see on the streets, which is outrageous, and we documented that last week. But what is happening with the animals and the dogs, and I mentioned Rebecca Corey last week, that's one set of problems. But what is happening with the money, the billions and billions of dollars in Los Angeles that is literally being corrupt. I remember somewhere around a year ago where I was told from somebody that I know very well that the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Central District here at any one time could indict every single member of the city council, but they were worried what that would do to the city of Los Angeles if they did it. And
that doesn't surprise me. Oh, remind me at the end, I got to tell you a great story about, I actually worked at City Hall when I was young, and it got me a ticket to see Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. Remind me to tell you this before we leave.
Yeah,
I got it. That's really funny. I spoke to somebody in Karen Bass's office, the mayor's office, because we were trying to get her on when we were going to put Spencer on and just kind of talk this out. And she wouldn't go on, or she was busy or whatever. But I will tell you something. I got some recon. So look, this is going to be a runoff. Everybody thinks somebody's going to be elected mayor. No, nobody's going to be elected mayor this time.
Goodness, would you explain that? Because people don't understand.
No, I understand. You have to get 50% plus in order to become mayor in a primary. Neither will get 50%. Karen Bass is now at around 30%. Spencer's at around 22%. The city councilwoman who is also running around 17, 18%, depending on what you look at. So nobody's going to get 50%, so there's going to be a runoff. What I found interesting was that I was told something that I am now confident of, that what Bass is hoping is that the other person, the city councilwoman, is going to be her runoff opponent and not Spencer Pratt, that she is more afraid of Spencer Pratt than she is her former employee who is now running against her, that she acknowledges the traction he has gotten, and she is much more fearful that he will win than she, or that he'll come in second as opposed to her. And I think that's really kind of interesting. And they played their hand with me in a way that they didn't think they were telling me that, but they did.
Oh, you're not wrong about that. You will find out before our next episode how I know that, but that is categorically 100% absolutely true. She does not want anything to do with Spencer Pratt in a runoff one-on-one. They're doing whatever they can to get Nithya to be in the runoff.
They tried to use me to do that by putting her on instead of Bass against Spencer. And I figured out what they were doing. And it's very clear to me they're more worried about Spencer.
And that's where the real race is here. For those who have told me, including incredibly smart, politically savvy people, as recently as this morning, oh, I think Spencer's got the momentum, he's going to win for mayor. No, he's not going to win for mayor. There's a subway stop before we get there, June 2nd, which is the election. The top two go to the next stage for the general. The real race here is not against Bass. It's Nithya versus Pratt. That is the race right now that everybody should be focused like a laser beam on.
Yeah. And look, I want to say this again, because I don't want to make this look like I'm for Spencer or for Bass, because I'm not taking a position on either, but I have problems that I've expressed. And I just want to make that clear. But look, with Spencer, the good thing is I had texted him a week or so ago, and he said to me, look, I'm going to put really smart people underneath me. And then we talked on the phone briefly, and he told me two of the people he was talking about. And they're good people. They're smart people, and they know city government. And I think that's important. But at the same time, I think democracy is a weird thing sometimes, that when you tell people, hey, you have the power to put people in office, and, what is it that's hooking them? And if it's these AI ads, and that's what they're going for, it kind of reminds me of the Free Britney movement, where everybody loved the concept, Free Britney Spears, freedom, the Constitution, America, free Britney. And nobody looked at the real issue, which was mental illness. And she, not her fault, has a serious mental illness. Nobody wanted to talk about that because it's just easier to say free Britney. And it feels like we're operating at the same kind of surface level. Ooh, I love those ads. He's kicking ass. That's great. What's he going to do? What's she going to do? It's like nobody wants to talk about that or hear about that. And it is really troubling that elections, you're right, are now turning on these really clever barbs and AI spots.
So I take the counter view. I like the idea that there's engagement. This is not a race that I think anybody 2 months ago, 3 months ago, thought there was going to be any kind of excitement about. There clearly is excitement. There clearly is engagement. But I don't think AI-inspired ads are necessarily bad in this sense. When there are programs that people disagree with. And I remember you have probably eaten at Langer's as many times as I have.
God, do not remind me. Oh, the corned beef. Oh, it's so good. It's the best ever.
Right. And so Langer's is
And the rye bread.
right. And the rye bread is unbelievable. It's right next to, adjacent to MacArthur
Park.
MacArthur Park has become, for those who aren't familiar with it in LA, it is, if you just took the park itself and if it was kept up, it would be one of the most picturesque places on earth.
Right.
It's gorgeous. It's a lake inside of a urban center, and it's surrounded it's designed beautifully and everything else. It has become a den of iniquity. And the programs that have been instituted by the city of LA are tragic, and it's the law of unintended consequences, whether it's the needle programs or anything else. Langer's is situated literally a pastrami throw from that park. You know
what Langer's does now?
Yes.
They have a drive up because people are so afraid to park their car and walk into the restaurant that you call and they'll bring it out to you so you don't have to get out of your car.
Think about how crazy
I know
in the last 10 years that I will tell you two things. You used to be able to drive, park in that parking lot and walk the block. Then the subway started. It was one subway stop and you could be there. Now you could declare a doubt as to your competency if you did either one of those. And Langer, to his credit, says, you phone ahead, drive up to the curb, look both ways, and we'll run the food out to you. Don't even get out of your car. And we accept that as normal. That's the only way this Los Angeles institution can maintain itself is you've got to drive up and then speed off with your
true. It's just true. And the idea, it's like, what has the mayor of Los Angeles done that has made a material visual difference in her tenure? And I'm telling you, she can tick off all this stuff and then blame the fire department on things. But I haven't seen LA working well. And that's a great example that you have a landmark that is now a drug den and nothing's being done about it. And it's just, it's sad. It is sad.
I will tell you I'll give you one last vignette before you talk.
Okay, and then I'm going to tell you my City Hall.
You're going to tell me your Janis Joplin story.
Yeah.
And this is so people understand, the city of LA is a subset within the county of LA. But a lot of times, because the county does not have the traditional titular head, where it does have a titular head, that people tend to think of and conflate the mayor with the county, and it's not one and the same like San Francisco. However, the county, when they were trying years ago to appoint, and Catherine Barger, who's one of the supervisors, tried to appoint my buddy, Dr. Drew, to the addiction homelessness kind of advisory committee, where he was going to volunteer to do it. He was drummed out of that appointment, cheerleaded by the usual suspects in LA because of his so-called views. And here you've got one of the most, I think, in my opinion, and full disclosure, is one of my closest friends, and they just drove him out, and she was forced to rescind it. Speaking of the best people, can you think of somebody better to have addressed, who was the early canary in the coal mine, talking about the disease with the homeless, talking about that this is primarily a mental health issue?
Yeah, I get it. Two things.
Yes.
Okay. One is, we don't have to have a big discussion about it. You and I need to go on the warpath before the next election so that somebody puts something in the ballot so people don't have to elect judges anymore. They should be done by an independent commission. It is so stupid that everybody's getting on their ballot 10 judges, none of whom anybody knows, and they're just blindly, oh, that person sounds okay. It's the dumbest thing ever, and it's such an important position. And we are electing people. We have no idea who the opponents are, who the judges are, and people are voting for it. This is the dumbest thing. It's the dumbest thing in California, right?
And also the fact that judges have to, at the trial court level, have to stand for election.
They have to stand for election every 6 years. It's like
Yeah.
standing for election for what?
Because they understand if you do one thing that's unpopular, yet you believe you're doing the judicial function, you can't help but think about that.
I personally, my opinion only, I think that's why Britney Spears got out of the conservatorship the way she did.
Well, you could be right, which, by the way, is once again why this is so successful in the political sphere.
Yeah.
Tell me
Okay, you want to hear the story? You want to hear the story?
Yes.
Okay. So when I was 19 years old, I was an intern for then Councilman Ed Edelman in City Hall, LA City Hall, and I loved it. And it was really cool being in city government and the whole thing. And he was a really important guy in City Hall. So at the time, we had two newspapers in LA, the LA Times and the LA Herald Examiner. And the Herald Examiner was on strike, and there was a picket line. And so you weren't supposed to cross the picket line and buy papers. The problem was that all the city council men, at the time they were all men, they wanted to know what the newspapers were saying about them. And they wanted to know what the Herald was saying about them. So somebody in that office said to me, go down the street and buy 2 Herald Examiners for the office, because a 19-year-old kid, just buying them, nobody's going to say anything. So I bought them, and the guy asked me, he said, who are you buying 2 papers for? And I said, oh, Councilman Ed Edelman's office. And it got back to the office that I had said I was buying the papers for them. So they literally, there were like 20 people in the office, and they took turns screaming at me. And it was sort of like, okay, you finished. Okay, now you go. And they would scream at me and tell me how stupid it was, which it was. And so by the end, they had beaten me up so badly that they felt really bad. And most of the people in the office were older. And he had season tickets, not only season tickets, but he had box seats, front row at the Hollywood Bowl, where Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix were performing together. And they said, we'll give you the seats. And so I got front row box seats, and I was like 12 feet away from Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. It was amazing. I can't even tell you.
So while you were crossing the picket lines at the Herald Examiner, what people may not remember, because there is no such thing anymore, I was a paper boy for the Herald Examiner, and probably 12 years old, delivering every afternoon that paper. That was, the Herald Examiner was one of the great LA institutions, but it was kind of a irreverent and housed in a beautiful building in downtown LA. What a bygone era, and what a great concert to have attended at the
Oh my God. Do you know what's so funny too? That you and I have been arguing all of our adult lives. And even as kids, it turns out we were competitors, because I was a paperboy for the LA Times.
Yeah, it figures you were for the LA Times. That was the kids, that you were ahead of your time being with the LA Times. I was the afternoon paper boy with the Herald Examiner. And talk about trying to collect money from subscribers. Wow.
Oh.
After the strike, nobody wanted to pay me.
No kidding. I know. But at least one of us got to go see the
Yes, you got to go see that concert. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll see how many. I'd be anxious to read the comments this week, Harvey. You're gonna be prepared for the blowback.
I am. I will not read them. So see you next week.
I'll do the Reader's Digest version.
And I'm sure you'll let me know.
Yes.
Okay. I'll see you next week.
Bye.